Scott Frost has a ton of new players on this year's team, but it might be veteran leadership they're looking to save the day.
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every single day. Joining me as he does every single Monday is my good friend, Andrew Gluco, purveyor of all things UCF sports, permanent guest here on Locked On UCF. Andrew, on today's show, we're going to do our UCF journalist spotlight. We're going to talk about an article by one Mr. Stephen Leonard highlighting some players that we should be keeping an eye on headed into fall, the rest of fall camp. We're going to talk about some recent comments from Scott Frost to the media, and then talk about the momentum that UCF is building in fall camp. Let's start with the article by Stephen Leonard. I encourage everybody, please go check out Stephen Leonard's work. You can find it at stephenleonard27.substack.com. He said that there are 3 returners poised for big roles this year. The first one being Antoine Jackson, the corner. Now, there is a clip going viral on social media of Antoine Jackson making a ridiculous one-handed grab. We have that clip for you here, so I'm going to play this real quick, and then we'll talk about Antoine Jackson. Wow. Do that in a game, and you're going to make SportsCenter's top 10. Talk to me, man. Antoine Jackson returns to this team, and a lot is going to be made of the guys who they added, but veteran leadership and returning leadership could be really important for Scott Frost in year one.
Yeah, especially at the defensive back position, which I think is one of the deepest position groups they have outside of maybe running back. You got a lot of talent there. You got the Henderson brothers, Damari and Jacurri. You got, Jaden Bellamy, who's a transfer coming in. Braden Marshall at nickel. There's a lot of talent here. Isaiah Reed. This is a very deep group. And Antoine Jackson was kind of viewed as an afterthought, dealing with injuries and being out of action. But, he sure looks like a guy who's ready to roll. I know, beat off the rust a little bit, get into the swing of things. But that's what camp's for, especially for a guy who's missed, a considerable portion of the off season. You have to be excited as a guy who was viewed as someone who potentially was going to struggle to get to the 2 deep is just showing complete, body control. I mean, that's aside from great hands, great concentration. I mean, we've seen some great highlight plays of one-handed catches, but from a defensive back, that is just a thing of beauty. And we already know Big 12 is where defenses go to die. So to have the defensive backs, strut their stuff a bit, I think goes a long way.
Yeah, Stephen Leonard highlighting Jackson as a potential impact player with his abilities and the experience that he brings to this team in year one. Super important. Next on the list is Kylan Fox. So again, I encourage you guys, please go to Stephen's page and read this article. But the 6'4", 229-pound sophomore could also be an impact player for UCF in year one. Tight ends could, both from a blocking standpoint and from a passing safety valve standpoint, could be super important for Scott Frost.
Oh, absolutely. And this is an area where you lose a great player like Randy Pittman to the portal. So someone's going to have to step up and be the guy at tight end. And we actually talked about this. You have Dylan Wade, the transfer, who has the experience. Kylan Fox, the true sophomore, very young, but you're going to see players transfer, not transfer, but rotate in and out. So you're going to get lots of playing time. this is an opportunity because this is not an established position as far as the pecking order. Fox has an opportunity to really break through and get a lot of playing time, because we talked about this during the show previously. We still have Wade as the guy, as the upperclassman. He's got the experience. He's played a lot more. He's been a part of the offense a lot more. But that doesn't mean he's the best player. It just means he's the most experienced player. So that's where a guy like Kylan Fox can show the explosiveness and make a difference. I think UCF is going to have to run multiple tight ends, especially if the passing game is struggles early, because they're going to have to do a lot of blocking, for those running backs. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for the tight ends to get in some action. And Kylan Fox, as a true sophomore, has a lot of potential and a lot of time to keep growing.
Kylan Fox there, second on Steven's list. Last but certainly not least, not a glorified position, but the right guard, Keegan Smith, is a guy that Steven has identified as someone who returns and could help anchor an offensive line that is going to be super important to Scott Frost. He's going to have to protect his QBs in year one, give these guys time to process the field, get through their reads, and make the right throws. Talk to me about Keegan Smith at right guard.
Offensive line has been much maligned during the Gus Malzahn era. This year, it's the two deep, more than half of it is brand new, is loaded with brand new players that came in from the portal this offseason. So you need to rely on guys who've been there for at least a year as part of that transition. Paul Rubelt is obviously the main anchor, but Keegan Smith was on the team, previously. While he's not originally from UCF, he transferred from Central Michigan. There's still that continuity aspect, and offensive line is all about players gelling together, your strongest or weakest link. And by having players that have worked together longer, kind of gives you a leg up, because Rubelt and Smith are going to be they're working side by side. So you want to have that kind of chemistry and synergy. How the rest of this 2 deep shapes up is still starting to form together. But I gotta say that Stephen Leonard's been covering UCF for many years, and he's done outstanding work. And for those who have been on the fence or not, subscribe to his Substack. He's great with covering recruiting. He knows his stuff. You won't be disappointed.
Definitely. I know I'm not disappointed. Besides watching Locked On UCF, not a better way to keep up what's going on with UCF football. Antoine Jackson, Kylan Fox, and Keegan Smith, guys that were on that 2024 squad that return, guys to keep an eye on here. So we thank Stephen Leonard on our UCF journalist spotlight here on Locked On UCF. Scott Frost, never get tired of hearing from him, Andrew. He had some comments that he made recently to the media. We'll play that clip and talk about that next on Locked On UCF. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at 5 Hour Energy, guys. Look, it's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor to your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or off it, you just need an extra boost to stay sharp and energized. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. Great ginger lime flavors give you the best parts of your clubhouse go without chasing down the beverage cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com. You can use our promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive $20 off your order. This offer is only valid until September the 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. So again, 5hourenergy.com today and use code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive $20 off your first order. Guys, get in the game with 5 Hour Energy. Andrew, Scott Frost spoke with the media here recently. We are into fall camp. He had I think it was his daughter on his hip while he made these comments. Let's listen to what Scott Frost had to say.
I just think everybody's coming together. You'll have to ask Nigel Leak. I see him in the back smiling. He and I did a workout together the other day, and he told me the biggest difference feels like the team's coming together and working together, and it's the beginning of it. I don't see it good enough yet, but it has a good feel to it. A bunch of guys that care about each other, and it's fun to come into work and work with these guys. So we just need to build on that and makes it fun to come in where I'm happy every day I drive into work here.
Can we talk about him working out with Nigel Lee Kelly? Scott Frost getting it in with his guys in the weight room. And he looks like he's in great shape, by the way. Hopefully
he does that.
Yeah. Hopefully that is, what we can expect from a team that's in shape, ready for the season, and hopefully injury free. Scott Frost has a very, very optimistic tone this fall camp. One of the things that I love about what Scott Frost is saying in the media is he's not really leaning on the whole year one rebuild thing. He is very focused on how he can field the most competitive team he has now. You have guys who take over programs like UCF, and all you hear in year one is, we need a guy here, we need a guy there, we need to recruit, we need to do all these things. Scott Frost just says, look, man, I'm going to find a route to winning with the guys I have now, and we're going to try to get the most we can out of this team now. I think he's got the right tone, and I think he's got the right message here in fall camp.
Well, there's a few ways you can look at this. One, energy is contagious, and it is. If you have a positive energy, others will respond to you. If you have a negative energy, they will respond to you as well. And if you're look at him towards the end of his time in Nebraska, there was negative energy, and it just brought everything down. Players, didn't play as well, because remember, football's a mental game. Most of the game is decided before the play even starts. If you're mentally not in it, you're done. You're going to make bad decisions. You're going to make your bad calls. You're going to have bad focus. You're going to make unforced errors on the field. If you have good energy and you're positive, your focus is better. You're looking at a different perspective of things, and it makes you work harder because you see the light at the end of the tunnel. So, the other thing is, lead by example. He's trying to lead by example by having that positive energy so that the others can feed off him. That's a role of a head coach. That's what they're supposed to do. And since UCF's hired a GM to manage the business aspect, he can focus squarely on the football aspect. And this is part of that job. Part of the job of being a coach is to bring up your players, bring the best out of them. And you can't do that with negative attitude. So you got to have that positive, optimistic attitude. And, obviously the game has changed a lot over the years, in recent years. So now it's actually easier to field a competitive team in year one. So, he's saying, he doesn't have to rehash the fact that most of this team is brand new. He doesn't have to rehash that. We already know it. So the view that he's I'm going to try and find the best way to win with the players I got. Aside from being a very optimistic point of view, it's also a realistic point of view of, this is what I got. I'm going to be recruiting, trying to build up below it. I've already established expectations from the get-go that we are not going to run the table in year one. That is not our expectation. So there's no game that's completely unwinnable. UCF was a very talented team last year that made mistakes at key times, had some key, injuries in the wrong spots, and as a result missed out. But they had Arizona State on the ropes. They had Iowa State on the ropes. 2 years ago, they hung with Oklahoma to the very end. So UCF's not a bad team, and they're still not a bad team. It's just, can Scott Frost get all these loose ends from these transfers together? And part of that is by talking the talk. But you talk about how Scott Frost working out. Well, when he was here the first time around, he helped the scout team in regards to the triple option that Navy would run, and he's in there practicing with the players. Frost may be getting, maybe closing on 50 years old. I think he's 50 now, but he's still in great shape and loves to run around. There's a number of coaches out there that love to do the workouts with the players and whatnot, and be one of them. And that's another thing that helps build camaraderie by going through the trenches with your players. I work with a youth organization, and as an advisor, as an adult advisor. And one of the things I've always stressed is to do activities that the adults and the youth can do together as a way of fostering, that trust and good relationships and all that stuff. This is no different. By having a coach go through doing the workout routines and everything, they see him in a different light as opposed to just a wallflower barking orders. So I think it actually, they now want to run even harder through the brick wall for him, because he's running through the brick wall himself. And again, lead by example. He's working out with them. He's showing that, hey, I'm putting in the work, you put in the work, and do it even and work even harder. So they're going to feed off that. And I think it's that energy thing. If you can keep it going, it'll bring the best out of these players.
Look, Scott Frost out there leading by example, both from a leadership standpoint and physically, just doing what his players are doing. I think that's amazing. Look, again, his tone has been great. I think his optimism has been, not unrealistic. But I like the no excuses mentality in year one, Andrew, of we're going to try to find ways to win games now. We're going to get the most of the guys we have now, and my guys are good enough. So whether they're actually good enough, he's going to try to get them to believe that they are, so that he can get whatever, as you leave it all on the field, the result is the result. And, that will be noticeable to fans when the team goes out and leaves it all on the field. Trust me, fans are smart, man. They know the difference between a team that is out there and left plays out there that and does not have the energy and hustle and the heart, right? I talked in a recent episode, I talked about that 2017 team that went up against Auburn in a bowl game, and Auburn got whooped. They got whooped by a team that wanted it more. They got whooped by a team that played like it was their Super Bowl. And if you're Scott Frost and you can get every week your players to play like it's their Super Bowl, I think people might be surprised at the record at the end of the year. So
I do want to throw one thing on top of that, because the SEC apologies. Oh, Auburn wasn't interested in that game, which I call BS on, and you probably agree on this. Auburn's history of 11-win seasons is not very robust. I think it's only maybe half a dozen times. And so they had a chance of doing that. I covered that game for UCF and interviewed a number of Auburn players, including Kerryon Johnson. That guy was ready to run through a brick wall to prove that he was, healthy and ready and all this other stuff. Kevin Steele, he said the right things and everything. That was a team that wanted it. But as you said, UCF wanted it more. And that doesn't discount how bad Auburn wanted that win, because they really did want that win. They couldn't handle. They overlooked the team, and when they got smacked in the mouth and then put on their heels, they didn't know how to respond. They caught back up, but they could not get past the hump. And then when that pick six happened, Shaquan Burkett, intercepted Jarrett Stidham. They kind of got like a little bit lost, like shell shock. And if it wasn't for a missed field goal, that game would have been over then and there.
I think
go ahead.
I think two things can be true at the same time, right? I think that Auburn wanted to win that game, but I also think that they came in pompous and took that for granted, and they got whooped by a team that was more focused and that was, quite frankly, better coached that day, because that mentality before the game, that's part of coaching. Preparing your team mentally for the game is part of coaching. And Scott Frost did a better job than Gus did of getting his guys mentally ready for that game. You know, I wasn't in the locker room, so I don't know what was said. But if I were coaching that team, I would focus on, look, guys, we're here to win. We've won a lot of games this season, but if you don't bring your A game, we're going to get whooped out there today. And I think if you're Scott Frost in year one, that's part of coaching that doesn't get old, that never dies. Bring that mentality back to UCF in year one. You want teams to look at UCF because there are a lot of people down on UCF right now. There are a lot of people overlooking UCF. Every time I talk to, and I bring guests on the show, and they're all, well, I think they're a 4 or 5 win team, and I hope UCF's opponents think that going into it, because they might catch some of that whooping Scott Frost is cooking up for this season if they have that attitude going into the game. So, some people dropped some comments on our recent videos talking about what motivation the players this year have, Andrew. And I think that they hear the things on social media, they see what we say in the media about them, and I think they take it personally, and they should. Go out with a chip on your shoulder in year one and whoop the crap out of everyone who's underestimating you. This is going to be fun.
And historically, UCF has operated better as an underdog. With a chip on it. That's the nature of the school. The school, was always kind of viewed as a smaller sibling school. You had your Miami, Florida States, and then you had UCF and South Florida, FIU and Florida Atlantic, but they were always kind of viewed as a little sibling. Well, now they've kind of worked their way up to be able to sit at the big people table. But here's the truth. They spent decades trying to catch up. So, I mean, that attitude, that view of the chip on the shoulder, that is built into the DNA of UCF. And so they operate better from that position as opposed to being a favorite.
Yeah. Look, as we get closer to game one, I don't know about you, man, but I'm really getting excited about what this team potentially will look like in the fall. Hopefully they can work it out in the first few games. And then when we see them versus North Carolina, we see a more complete UCF team. But look, they need momentum here at the end of fall camp. We'll talk about what that looks like next on Locked On UCF. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with killer last-minute deals. If you're tired of the endless scrolling to find deals, Game Time's zone deals pick the best seats for your section. You get panoramic seat views, guys, so you know exactly what it's going to look like. And if your plans change, the Game Time guarantee has your back with cancellation protection and more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. What time is it? Game Time. Fall camp. You got to create momentum headed into game one. Part of that will be figuring out who your starting QB is. Scott Frost is a few days closer to figuring that out. As I reported on a weekend episode, Cam Fancher seems to be doing a lot better than what people thought he was, and is firmly in the mix for QB1. You've got to get this pass game going, at least to some extent, if you're Scott Frost. The position UCF found themselves in, Andrew, last year was down the stretch when they had to move the ball through the air to make a comeback or, keep momentum. They couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it. And that's part of the reason why playing from behind is part of the reason why RJ Harvey comes up short of the carries he should have gotten, was because late in games when you're down, you got to throw the ball to try to come back. And UCF just wasn't there enough to be able to control the clock with RJ Harvey at the end of the games and hold on to leads. How important in your mind is it that UCF go into game one with some semblance of a passing game?
Oh, I think it's very important. Game one is a losable game. It's not an FCS cupcake. It's an FBS squad, not named Kent State. So that means they could lose that game. And even though, it should be a win, UCF is the better team, but is the offense going to be one-dimensional? And that just puts a lot more stress on the defense and the running game to be able to produce. So the passing game needs to have some sort of not so much balance, because I don't expect it's going to be balanced in week one. I expect the running game to kind of dominate with to open up the pass game as they continue. At this point, if they can't figure out a starter to evaluate quarterbacks, but hopefully they can actually figure out who's going to be QB1 before this completely gets going. Time's running out. We're recording this on the night of August 3rd. On August 28th, on that Thursday, is week one, is game one against Jacksonville State. So there's not a lot of time left to figure this out. But conversely, there is a lot of time to figure this out, because all it takes is one announcement, like one decision. This is my starter. And it doesn't even have to be publicly announced. Like we got fooled last year when EJ Colson started, and then we got fooled to think that he was actually ready to play. Scott Frost could quietly make this decision, because this has been going on as long as it has. You could play off the story of, I haven't figured out totally who the guy's going to be, and then we'll find out who's the starter and see if he stays in the game for a prolonged period of time. I guess that's one of the ways that in the chess game of coaching, Scott Frost has actually created a situation that he can maybe take advantage of and use to his benefit, is because these three quarterbacks are so different. You can actually build, as we say, build the momentum by having all three continue to play, but start leaning without fully leaning and kind of fooling the opponents a little bit, because it's going to be really difficult to game plan for each of these, for all three quarterbacks at the same time, because they're so dynamically different. One's pocket passer, one's more of a do threat, one's a runner. How do you properly plan for that? Do you just game plan for a dual threat and hope for the best? I mean, that's not easy, but at some point Frost is going to have to try and get more reps to whoever he thinks his QB1 is going to be, just so he can continue to build that chemistry. All three of these guys are working with offensive line that is largely different than it was last year. Even Jacurri Brown, who was on the team last year, it doesn't matter. This is largely a new offensive line, new wide receivers. There are some new running backs in the room. And so they all have to gel and find chemistry and work with the tempo that the offense is designed off of.
Yeah, it's getting close to time. They're going to have to figure this out pretty quickly, but Scott Frost seems to have a rhythm here in fall camp with his team. And what I've noticed in the tone from the players is it seems as if he's got buy-in from all the guys who are going to be his leaders in the fall on what this is going to look like. They're going to try to play fast. They're going to try to air it out some. They're going to lean on the run game some. I think they could have a chance to be very balanced this fall. Going to be fun to watch. Again, we are one day closer to college football here on Saturdays. I can't wait. Can't wait. As long as off season in sports. Andrew, I want to thank you for joining me on Locked On UCF. I want to thank Stephen Leonard for his contributions to today's show. Again, go check him out on his Substack. He does great work. That's Stephen Leonard 27.substack.com. I want to make sure I get that right. STPHEN LEONARD 27.substack.com. He does great work covering the UCF Knights. Guys, that's it. We appreciate you for joining the show today. Thank you for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. For your next listen, check out our guys at The Portal Show. Our guy Brian Smith has the latest in portal signings and rumors, all the going-ons in college football. You can find the Portal Show on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. You can find us here tomorrow on Locked On UCF.